Hi, my name is Chris Kellner. I am presenting on my presentation that states perceptions of those on the autism spectrum. Hi, so when developing my hypothesis, I actually had a few things in mind. First was Sheldon Cooper. I am a big fan of The Big Bang Theory, and for years the show has been on, fans have actually made this sort of hypothesis on their own that he has autism because of his obsessive behaviors that he acts on shows signs in his personality on the show. However, when asked the writers of the show that he does not have ASD and he never actually was diagnosed or anything on the show or at all, and the audience actually like perceived that he did have these traits because it was common of the autism spectrum. Now, this was interesting to me for many reasons, and I even had a rapper here at the bottom who is um, an underground rapper. However, this year he came out that he was no longer ashamed as autistic. So there's definitely this stigmatization that I found interesting to study and develop my hypothesis based on this information. So right in the start of my introduction, I start with this problem statement. Do people perceive others differently if they know or know of somebody on Facebook of this profile telling them that they have autism? Or they attribute these specific personality traits higher or lower when a person is described as having ASD or not on Facebook? Well, there is a study that suggests below at Sasson ETL 2018 as he actually conducted a 10-item personality scale, the TIPI, that I actually modified my own version of in my study and saw that in the results that there was no correlations of perception per se. However, personality traits, specifically the non-ASD, did attribute negative personality traits for those on the spectrum. So I found this really interesting. My hypothesis states that on average, we predicted that when the person is described as autistic on the Facebook profile, then they will be rated higher on introversion, social stigma, aggressiveness, intelligence, and lower on extroversion, anxiousness, or anxious, higher reserved, warm, cold, moral, and detail oriented. The me- this is my methods section. Our participants included mainly right out of young adulthood, so the sample was mostly of adults with a mean of 31.64 and a standard deviation of 11.53. Our gender identities were 10.6 percentage that were male, 8.51% female, and 4.3% non-binary. Race and or ethnicity was 4.3% Asian, 36.2 were black or African American, 10.6 were Latinx, 40.4% were white or European, and 8.5% were some other race. Sexual orientation, 12.8 identified as gay, 68.1 identified as straight, 12.8 identified as bisexual, and declined to comment were 66.4% for sexual orientation in our study. Participants were recruited online on our University of Baltimore's psychology Wegmans lab for participants who wanted to volunteer. They got research credit if they did the study, and we did a between subjects design. Here you can see on the left is our experimental group, and the control group is on the right. We actually gave participants either assigned to the experimental or the control group. Now, if participants were given this vignette, one or the other, this between subjects design, then they were told to fill out a brief 10-item personality inventory modified version that I created and rate them on a questionnaire after seeing their Facebook profile. Now here's our questionnaire that we created so you guys can see that we had made this TIPI or personality scale or questionnaire specifically was what we collected from a questionnaire hosted by Qualtrics.com. You can see all 12 here listed that we asked them when exposed to either the experimental or control condition. This leads us to our results. Now, actually, to make sense of this, we made a reliability difference of means test. We did a reliability analysis as we conducted a series, or 12 specifically, in the questionnaire. You can see the tippy of an independent samples t-test to compare if the person is judged or attributed these personality traits stereotypically associated with the ASD or Facebook or not. In an attempt to combine these personality traits, it was not successful at all, as each of the 12 independent t-tests that I did write up measured different things. There was not a significant difference for any of these variables. So I restate here my pretty much what we predicted as our hypothesis was when people described a statistic on Facebook profile that they would be rated higher on introversion, social stigma, aggressiveness, intelligence, and lower on extroversion, anxious, hireable, reserved, warm, cold, moral, and detail-oriented. So also did not match my hypothesis because of social desirability bias, or as ASD characteristics like social stigmatized intelligence appeared as more of a positive perception of ASD behavior that reduced the validity in my own online study. Gathering findings of journal articles, I can support that this is actually common for there not being a significant difference. There is a study done here, Stravolis ETL 2018, has he conducted an experimental study using an EEG machine of faces, and where they described to tell a picture of someone backwards mask for actually ASD and a person who's not ASD, and they conducted an independent self-t-test showing that there was not enough evidence for personality traits of a person with autism or not, and there was no difference found in their results. No significant difference similar to mine. I wanted to state my limitations, confounds, and future directions. Small limitations were specifically small sample size. We had a very small sample size in our study as we had time constraints of approval of IRB. We did have some possible confounds, like stated from our hypothesis. This social desirability bias reduced this validity online, and not specifying where on the spectrum the person was on or described as autistic on Facebook was a big confound for me, as I didn't specify this until later or thought about doing that. And future directions for future research, we suggest leaving the experimental survey open for a longer length of time and to gather participants strictly from social media platforms to see this effect on social media, not just from one, say, Facebook or just social media platforms, or in general.